Welcome to all my dear students. In this class, we are starting chemical reaction and equation. So this is lecture number first of this chapter. So let's begin this without any waste of time. So let's begin. Here we are. What is a chemical reaction? Okay guys. So before explaining this, before explaining this chemical reaction to you, let me write something. C plus O2 is equals to CO2. So what is this? Basically guys, this is a chemical reaction. But you might not be understanding that how can it be a chemical reaction. So let me decode it for you. Basically, this C is representing carbon and this is oxygen, which is a gas. And when there is a reaction between this carbon and this oxygen, then this CO2 is formed. This is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide. So this is what? This is a gas. This oxygen is also a gas. But this carbon is solid. So basically, a chemical reaction is taking place here. And what I have written here, this is a chemical equation. So how do we write this chemical equation? I will explain this later. But for now on, let me tell you what is chemical reaction. So, the transformation of chemical substance into another chemical substance is known as chemical reaction. Mind my words, what I have said, that the transformation, let me write it here for you, transformation of chemical substance into another chemical substance is known as chemical reaction. Is known as what? Chemical reaction. Okay. So in chemical reaction, what happens? The previous bonds breaks and new bonds formed. So what I want to say basically, let me write a chemical equation for you. This is a chemical equation. Fe plus CuSO4, when these two things react, then it will give FeSO4 plus Cu. So you also, here also you might not be able to understand what I have written. So this is a chemical equation. You don't need to be worried how did I write it, because just after some time you will write it by your own. You will learn how to write this chemical equation. But for now on, you just need to cooperate me that what I want to say. So here I want to say that there was a substance copper sulfate. This is known as copper sulfate. This is copper, this is sulfate ion. So this is copper sulfate. When this copper sulfate reacts with iron, so they form ferrous sulfate or iron sulfate. You can call it iron sulfate because this is iron and this is what? Iron sulfate. And here it is normal copper. So what is happening? Previously there was a bond between copper and sulfate ion, but when they react with this iron, that this bond breaks a new bond between iron and sulfate is formed, and then we got copper as a product and the iron sulfate as a product. They both are product. Okay. So what is a chemical reaction? So the transformation of chemical substance. Here you can see this substance is transformed into the iron sulfate. Previously it was copper sulfate, but now after the reaction it becomes iron sulfate. So here what is happening? Transformation. The transformation of chemical substance into another chemical substance is known as chemical reaction. I hope guys you might have got my point. The other thing what I have told you, that when new bond is formed and previous bond breaks, then we will say, or we will call the reaction a chemical reaction. I hope guys this thing is clear to you. Okay. Now let's move ahead and let's talk about some other thing related to the chemical reaction. Here we are. Now I will teach you how do we identify a chemical reaction. Okay. So basically here we will learn how to identify a chemical reaction. So for that, these 4 points are written here. These 4 factors are written here. If you see any of these factors, then you will say that a chemical reaction is taking place there. Okay, so what are these factors? First one is change in state. If you see that there is a change in state, then you can say that a chemical reaction is taking place there. Okay. Second thing, release of a gas. Second thing is what? Release of a gas. If a gas is released after the reaction, then you can say this is a chemical reaction. And the fourth point is change in temperature. If there is a change in temperature, then also you can say that a chemical reaction is taking place there. Okay. So guys, now let's talk about these points one by one. So first of all, let's talk about change in state of a substance. First of all, let me write here change in state of a substance. So you might have seen a candle. We all see a candle. So whenever a candle burns, then what happens? It starts converting into a liquid. Okay, it starts converting into a liquid. So what is happening? Basically, the state of the candle is being changed. The state of the candle is being changed. So that's why you can say a chemical reaction is taking place there. I hope guys you might have got this point. Okay. So the combustion reaction of candle wax is characterized by a change in state from solid to liquid and then gas. Because let's suppose wax is a solid and water formed by the combustion of a wax is a liquid, and carbon dioxide produced by the combustion of the wax is a gas. Okay, so this is an example of a chemical reaction where we are able to see the change in state of a substance. I hope guys you might have been able to get what I want to make you understand here. And we can also understand this by another example. Let's suppose this is a coal. This is basically coal, and when this coal reacts with oxygen, then this will give us carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide. Now you might think that what is this arrow and what is this plus sign? So you need to have some patience, because later I will tell you But here you just need to understand that a coal is reacting with oxygen and then giving us carbon dioxide. So you can see the state of a coal is solid state. But now the state of carbon dioxide is gas. So what you are able to see here, solid is changed into the gas. So state is change. So this is the first factor which we have seen here. Now let's talk about the evaluation or release of a gas. Let me write it here. Evaluation of a gas. So what is this example? Let's suppose we have a material called zinc. Okay, this is zinc and it is shown by this symbol Zn. And we have another substance and that is H2SO4. Now it is a chemical formula of sulfuric acid. Okay, basically this is a acid and it is in aqueous form. It is in liquid state. Now guys, what will happen when these two substances react? Then they will give us zinc sulfate. Let me write it here for you. Zinc, when it reacts with sulfuric acid, then it will give us zinc sulfate, and hydrogen gas. What is the formula of this zinc sulfate? The formula of the zinc sulfate is ZnSO4 and it is also in liquid state. Let me write it clear for you. Okay. So for liquid state we write aqueous and in short we write AQ and then add a dot. So basically guys, what I want to make you understand here, that hydrogen gas is released in this reaction. So what we are studying? We are studying how to identify a chemical reaction. So if a gas is released in that reaction, or you can say if two substances react and as a product a gas is released, so we can say their chemical reaction is taking place. Okay, so this is the second factor which we have discussed. Okay, yet we have seen two factors. First one is change in state and the second one is release of a gas. Now guys, let's talk about change in color. And to make you understand this change in color, let me take you to the next slide. Okay guys, so here we are. Now here we will discuss the third point and that is change in color. Change in what color? So basically, to make you understand about this factor, let me give you an example. So what is this example? Let's suppose that a reaction, or you can say a chemical reaction between copper sulfate and iron. So when these two substances react, then they will give us another substance and that is iron sulfate, okay, and copper. So basically guys, the color of the copper sulfate is basically blue. The color of the copper sulfate is blue. But the color of the iron sulfate is green. Okay, so these are the substances which were reacting, and here the color of this substance is blue, but after the reaction it changes into the green. So if a change in color is taking place, then also we can say that chemical reaction is taking place there. Okay guys, so yet we have seen three factors. First one is change in color, second one is release of a gas, and first one is change in state. Now let's talk about the fourth factor, and that is change in temperature. That is change in temperature. Okay guys, so to make you understand this factor, let me again tell you a chemical reaction. So the chemical reaction between quicklime water to form slaked lime is characterized by a change in temperature. Okay, or you can say rise in temperature. So let me write this equation for you. So quicklime, the formula of quicklime is CaO. CaO, which is also known as calcium oxide. Calcium oxide. Okay, and when this quicklime reacted with water, what is the chemical formula of water? H2O. When this quicklime react with water, then it will give us calcium hydroxide. Calcium hydroxide. Hydroxide. And what is the formula of calcium hydroxide? CaOH all twice. Okay, so this calcium hydroxide is used to paint our houses. Okay, so what happen? This calcium oxide, when it reacts with water, then it will give us calcium hydroxide. But why I'm talking about change in temperature? Because when this reaction takes place, then lots of heat is released. Lots of heat is released. So basically, you can say the temperature rises. So this is an example of a chemical reaction. Okay, guys. Okay, guys. So here we are. Here we will try to understand what is a chemical equation and how do we write it. So basically, writing a chemical reaction we are learning here. So a chemical reaction is written in a form of chemical equation. Chemical equation. Okay. So here two things are very important. Okay, two terms are very important. Let me tell you what are those terms. So first one is reactant. Reactant. And what are reactant? Reactants are the substances which take part in a chemical reaction are called reactants. Okay, let's suppose, let me give you an example that here this CH4, it is basically methane. It is what is it is methane. So when this methane reacts with oxygen, then this will give carbon dioxide. This is what carbon dioxide, carbon dioxide, and this is what H2O is what H2O is water. I think you should know these basic chemical formulas because it is frequently used. So when this methane reacts with this oxygen, then this will give us carbon dioxide and water. So the reactants are CH4, or you can say methane and oxygen are the reactant. Okay, methane and oxygen are the reactant. Let me clear it for you. So this CH4 and this oxygen are the reactant because they are reacting and then they are giving us the result. So I hope guys you might have been able to understand what is reactant? Let me write it here also so that you can easily understand. So substances which take part in a chemical reaction, in a chemical reaction are called reactants, are called reactants. Okay, so example, you can write as an example CH4, which is methane, and you can also write oxygen, oxygen, which is written like this. This is a gas. Okay guys, so I hope this thing is clear to you what is reactant. Now the second important term is product. Product. Now what is product? So product basically nothing but the new substances formed after a chemical reaction is called product. Okay, so these reactants react, and as a result they gave us some product, and product in this case is carbon dioxide and water. They are product in this case. Okay, so what is product? So the new substances formed after a chemical reaction is called a product. So let me write it here for you that new substance formed formed after a chemical reaction, after a chemical reaction is called a product, is called a product. Okay, so if I talk about the examples of product, then you can see in this case what is product? Carbon dioxide is product. Okay, what is this? This is carbon dioxide. You should know what are the chemical formulas of the substances and what are their full names, because this is very important. Carbon dioxide. Let me write a little bit clear for you. Carbon dioxide. Okay, so I think guys these things are clear. Now let's move ahead and let's talk about how to write a chemical equation, because this is very important. So guys, here on this slide we will study about chemical equation. Okay, chemical equation. Now what is a chemical equation? So in a nutshell we can say that chemical equation is a representation of chemical reaction using symbols and formulas of the substance. Okay, let's suppose we have been talking about this reaction since the very first slide, that when carbon, okay, let me write it clear for you so that you will have a good idea what actually a chemical equation. So when carbon reacts with oxygen, it gives carbon dioxide, carbon dioxide as a result. As a what? Result. Okay. So now if I want to write it, then you can say how lengthy is this process. I have to write carbon reacts with oxygen, it gives carbon dioxide as a result. So isn't it very boring? Each time if I have to write the same thing, then it will be very toxic for me. Okay. So what we have done, we have basically invented chemical equation. So what would I do? I will simply represent these substances with their formula, with their chemical formula, okay, and with their symbols, so that it will be easier to write a chemical reaction. Let's suppose if I want to write this same thing, then I can write it C plus O2 equals to CO2. So this is also portraying the same message which this statement was portraying. Okay, this is also the same thing written here, which is written here, but it is a little bit simple and short. Whoever see this equation will understand this statement, that he will understand that carbon is reacting with oxygen and giving carbon dioxide. So to make a chemical reaction, or you can say to write, or to make it easier to write a chemical reaction, we write chemical equation. So this is the difference between chemical reaction and equation. Chemical equation is nothing but a representation of chemical reaction. Okay, so now let me tell you some important things. So this is an example. Now in general, how can we write a chemical equation? Basically A plus B, then we will add an arrow, then C plus D. Okay, so in this equation, this A and B are reactants. These are what? Reactants. Okay, and this C and D are what? These are products. These are products. Okay, and this arrow shows the direction of chemical reaction. Shows the direction of chemical reaction. It means if this arrow is this side, then it is showing that this is reactant and this is product, and these reactants are reacting and then giving us this product. So this is showing the direction of this chemical reaction. Okay guys, so this arrow is very important, and the left side of this arrow are the reactant side, and the right side of this arrow is the product side. So these are the products and these are the reactants. And we have to represent the substances by their chemical formulas. And one thing also you have to mention, that what is the state of the reactants. What is the state of the reactant? Here you can see this carbon is in solid state. So I will write S. This S for solid. Okay. This O2 is in gaseous state. So I will write this G. G is for gas. If this CO2 will also be gas, so I will write G. It means also gas. If it is liquid, then I can write L, or I can also write AQ. AQ is for aqueous. So this is a complete representation of a chemical reaction. Okay guys, I hope you might have been able to understand how can we write a chemical reaction. Okay, so guys, now let's talk about some example. So let's move on to the next slide. So students, here two examples are given. Okay, so let's read these examples, and on the basis of our knowledge which we have gained in this lecture, let's try to solve it out. So this is example number first. If zinc reacts with sulfuric acid and gives us zinc sulfate and hydrogen, write down its chemical equation. Okay, write down its chemical equation. So because we know that a chemical equation is written like this: A plus B arrow C plus D. Okay, it is basically a sample equation. So we know that reactants of the reaction comes on the left side of the arrow and product comes on the right side. So in this reaction, we have to identify what all are the reactants and what all are the product. So basically zinc is reacting with sulfuric acid. So zinc and sulfuric acid are the reactant. So zinc plus sulfuric acid. Okay, now here I have committed a mistake. You have to identify that what mistake I am doing here. So you are right, guys. Your guess is 100% right. We know that we have to write the symbol or the formula of the substances. But here I am not writing the formula, I am writing the name of the substance. So it means it is wrong. Okay. So what did I have to write? Let me erase it first and then let me show what should I write here. Okay. So basically I have to write Zn, which is formula of zinc. Okay. And also I have to write plus H2SO4, which is formula of sulfuric acid. And then now we have to identify what all are the products. So what are the products, guys? Identify the products in this equation. So the product in this equation are the zinc sulfate, means ZnSO4, it is its chemical formula, plus because hydrogen gas is also released as a product, that means that I have to write hydrogen also on the product side. Okay, so is it the chemical equation complete? So our answer is no, because we are yet to mention their states of the substances. Then the chemical equation will be considered as a complete equation. So what is the state of zinc? Solid. What is the state of sulfuric acid? Aqueous. Okay. What is the state of zinc sulfate? It is also aqueous. And what is the state of hydrogen? Because this is a gas, so that means it will be written G. Okay guys, so this is the solution of this first example. Now let's talk about the second example. So what is the factor to identify the chemical reaction? Okay, so this is the first factor, change in state. So of course this is a factor. We had studied about this, that change in state is a factor to identify a chemical reaction. The second factor is change in color. Of course it is also true, because change in color is also a factor to identify chemical reaction. Third point is change in temperature. This is also true. So it means all the statements here are true. So that's why I will take on this option number 4, means all of the above options are true. Okay. So I hope guys these things are clear to you, these examples and whatever we have learned in this lecture. Thank you so much guys. So I am ending this lecture here and we will meet in the next lecture. Thank you so much and bye bye.